This is Well Read Reviews. Today we're looking at Penguin Episode 2, the HBO Max series. We'll also be discussing Batman Long Halloween, Issue 6, first appearance of Sofia Falcone. We're joined by Twitless and Matt C. Stay right there. Matt C., tell us about The Penguin, Episode 2.
Yeah, so the second episode, we're watching Oz the Penguin. We're watching him, played by Colin Farrell, uh, try to continue to try to cover up the killing of Alberto Falcone that he killed in the first episode, and also he's getting deeper into solidifying his position with both sides of this crime syndicate civil war that is ginning up in Gotham, and importantly, he's at the same time he's developing a stronger friendship in a sense with Sofia Falcone, Alberto's sister. Although they continue to have this kind of dance of trusting and distrusting, and we know as viewers that neither of them should be trusting each other or anybody. But it's a very interesting episode too.
Fascinating. And Twitless, tell us about Long Halloween.
Batman: The Long Halloween is Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale's classic superhero story about Batman solving a series of murders that happen over the course of a whole bunch of holidays, the holiday killer, and kind of delving into the underworld and into the seedy underbelly and dealings with the Falcone family in particular. So in this particular issue, we get it's covering St. Patrick's Day, and so because four-leaf clovers, that issue has to do with poison ivy. Is kind of like the villain of that particular issue, but we get introduced to Sofia Falcone, who is Carmine's daughter, and what we have here between the show and the comic is a very different take, just like we have with the Penguin, because in the comics, Sophia is built like freaking Solomon Grundy. She's built like almost the Hulk, and she is just a tank of a woman. Who can like crush a man's head in her bare hands. Her face is like twice the size of her father's in the panel that she's introduced in. So she is just introduced as a brute force muscle character who goes in to kind of like help start investigating who's whacking off the Falcones.
I like the interpretation from the comic books. The character is stable. She's just released from penitentiary, not from necessarily the asylum, and she steps into a role of being a leader in the mob family. So not somebody who's unstable, and as you said, more of a brute force, a very unique take on a female mob character. So in the comics, she's a classic character. She's represented in a lot of storylines. The show took a very different take on her. She's psychotic. She's a serial killer, and someone to be feared more for her instability. Not really trusted in the family as well, which I thought was very interesting. The way that the story unfolds in the show is that they start to realize there's a traitor in their midst, which, of course, if you've been following the series, is actually the Penguin. And they start hunting him out. And, of course, they suspect the Penguin, but end up realizing or being deceived into realizing that it was actually one of Sophia's henchmen. And this leads to a lot of doubt in Sophia's capability to be a leader in the family. So she forms a bond, a unique opportunity with the penguin to be able to elevate her position, but only because she is so mistrusted in the TV series. A very different take from what you see in the comic books, and not sure if it still is the same character when all those things are considered together.
It is a very different character. I will say that to her credit, Kristen Milioti does a even if she's playing a different character, she is playing a compelling character. And since Sophia is a very not as well known character, I think that might be a little. Personally, it's a little more forgivable than how the changes that they've done to people like the Penguin in particular. But I will say this: Miliotti's got she's got the crazy eyes on lockdown. A lot of her performance is in her eyes. She's very much an eye actress in this role. So you watch her eyes and how she like looks at people and how she kind of like stares or glares or whatever. And she gives that impression of she's capable of like anything. She's either going to be kind of nice to you or she's going to try to strangle you or have one of her henchmen do it. And so a lot of this series, a lot of where they've parked their car from what the dramatic tension comes from is in these characters who are all within a knife's edge of something awful, but they're all smiles. But then, like you said, just one little twist of fate and they're all going to be killing each other. And so Sophia in this series is just really selling it really well with her facial expressions, and in particular her big saucer eyes that she kind of looks at people with. It's very different from in the comics where she just really has kind of a flat look for most of it.
Yeah. Like as someone said, like a brute, intimidating force, right? Her hands, in particular, very powerful in the comics.
Yeah, I agree with that take. Actually, in many ways, it is a better character, probably one better suited for television. I would see something like that being more well represented by having a talented actress. And what talented actress are you going to have to play a big, brutish Sofia Falcone as effectively as she's visually represented in the comic books, particularly with Tim Sale's art, which does a very good job of those garish, large, foreboding type characters. His Batman interpretation being a good representation of his technique. So definitely a big fan of the performance for the character. How the show has been progressing so far, I would say I like this episode better than the first. The first one I felt was a little bit more contrived. And in this one, we do see a bit more of Penguin's plan coming to fruition. He's much more deft at his machinations and ability to manipulate people. And you're seeing a little bit more of his ability to reach out to a broader swath of criminals that is going to actually help him execute his plan. He's now manipulating Sal and their entire family and utilizing them quite effectively in undercutting the Falcones while still operating in the Falcones' trusted circle. So quite clever is how all of this is kind of unfolding as the show progresses. I'm looking forward to seeing future episodes as this continues.
He's pulling a Mac from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's like, I'm playing both sides. Except he doesn't do the part where he tells both sides he's playing both sides. He only tells one side he's playing both sides. Or no, he doesn't tell either of them. Sorry. I'm messing up my It's Always Sunny lore. But what did you guys think? I was really happy to see Clancy Brown as Salvatore Maroni.
Yeah, that was nice. I didn't know he was still around. It's kind of nice to see him.
And Clancy Clancy just has that voice presence. So even if in my head, because to bring up the Long Halloween is definitely channeling Godfather vibes for the Carmine Falcone, and the character we got in the Batman didn't really strike me as the Godfather essentially. But Clancy, even if he's playing a slightly different, not who I would picture for, Maroni, is still very much a presence. And like I said, his voice is very commanding. So I was like, hearing that. That being said, how do you guys take? And this is minor nitpicks, but I was fine with Colin Farrell's voice in the Batman because you only get him in little spurts.
Sure.
But I go, if I'm gonna have to hear 8 hours of Colin Farrell pretending to have an over exaggerated, like, I'm pretending to be like a sort of.
What do you mean?
He's never been good. He has never been good at accents.
Yeah,
he's doing his own. It always gets a little cartoony. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's super cartoony, and he's got like this sort of like rasp to it. So he's having a super exaggerated accent plus a rasp. And I'm like, ooh, man, I'm gonna have to listen to this for 8 whole hours. I'm not sure if this was the best decision for just the auditory side of things.
If it works at all, it's only because, like what you mentioned in a previous recording, that he's arresting your attention a little bit more. I guess he's chewing up the scene, and nobody else is allowed to chew up the scene except for maybe the actress playing Sophia. So you're always aware of who the main character is, I guess, because he's the most larger than life character, I guess, out of all of them.
It's because he's wearing a fat suit.
I mean, and he's so distorted too. His face is scarred in so many different ways.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a 4th book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
I haven't lost interest in watching the performance quite yet, but I can see what you're saying, that it starts to bleed through a little bit, that there is Colin Farrell under all that.
You start looking for him.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I see it in the eyes personally, and I notice that he has to squint a lot to cover the fact that when he's just gawking at you, you see Colin Farrell's eyes, and he's not that menacing and sinister. Unless he furrows his brow and contorts his face. So you do see aspects where he's trying to conceal, even in the performance, a little bit of the acting, but it's still engaging. And particularly the writing, I think, has been very good. And you continue to see the character develop. He also has a lady friend in this story, which was introduced, I believe, in the first episode. But here you see
as an alibi.
Their dynamic and how he does have trusted people around him. This is a very human rendition of the Penguin, which is a theme that we've talked about before, that they are creating a very three-dimensional character here where you can empathize with him, and you see this as a man who's trying to anchor himself in the world somehow, even though he's been cast adrift from the very beginning. He was given a bad lot. He was crippled. He had to find his way in a bad neighborhood and with lots of adversity at home, but he still normalized it for himself and found ways to be human. And that's something that you didn't really get from a Penguin in the comics that eventually gets captured by the Batman and sent to prison justifiably. What would you want to see this Penguin fate actually be? Would you want him to find the things that he's searching for, which really, when it comes down to it, he's searching for what everyone is searching for. He wants companionship and he wants trust, but he's also very driven by this need to be respected and to be a larger than life figure, frankly, driven by the manipulations of his mother, who puts those expectations on him, telling him that he needs to get her out of this home, and if her son is a nothing, then what is she? So Penguin in the series is very much a victim of circumstance.
I feel like I'm the only one who remembers, and this is maybe not anyone's fault apart from the film, because the film had some structural problems, but I feel like everyone forgets that in the Batman, Penguin like kills a whole bunch of people through like vehicular homicide. That one car chase scene, and then like the cars explode, like
Yeah.
there's like 20 people who died on that freeway.
Right.
And I'm
He
like,
shoots a lot of people in this episode.
so but when he's doing this sort of like mob stuff, it's usually like, no one's clean. He's just killing like mobsters and stuff. But on that freaking interstate or highway overpass, whatever, like he just killed so many people and laughed about it. And so, yes, I want Batman to put him in so much prison because of all of the innocent people who got blown up. And then,
Right.
but the film just moves on from that so fast, so that like I don't even think it registers. So that's the film's fault. But that's one of those areas where this is a piece of fiction that is directly tied to and follows something else.
That's challenging.
So yeah, so and that is a challenge because people are here, even if it kind of ends up existing in a way on its own. People show up because of that film, and they come with, often with what that film told them. So that is something I think it's having to pedal uphill a little bit, and that's.
Well, because what is TV? What does prestige television do now? Since shows like Sopranos and Breaking Bad, it has to intensely humanize these broken, fallen, tragic characters, and it has to do it from episode 1, so that we will stick around for a season or two. And it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, if they want to, surely it's got to be a tragedy. We were introduced to this guy having a cool head, figuring out how to be nimble in conversation and manipulate people to his advantage. But he does have a fatal flaw that causes serious issues for him, where he will go to his instincts and ruin a situation. And I'm sure it looks like the writing is quality enough where we're going to get those kind of signals happen later down the line in this particular season, where we're going to see him. The instincts are going to pop up, and you're going to watch that tragedy descend. He's going to get worse and worse as a character, even though they've maybe rehabilitated him a bit, I guess, from what the movie was. He's gonna descend back into that laughing while killing people kind of scenario. I'm certain that's where they're gonna go if they're smart about it.
Yeah, I'd like to see that actually, because I would like to see a good justification for Batman to finally feel it behooves him to step in and kibosh this penguin deviant. But circling back actually to Sofia Falcone, I felt the same thing with her. The one in the comic book is very two-dimensional. She's a brute, and she's a female mobster. But the one in the TV show is quite empathetic. She's been rejected her entire life. There's an old friend that she meets who's very false with her and acts like they're still the same friends that they were when they were younger.
Her cousin, yeah.
Her cousin. Yeah, exactly. And the minute her child steps up, she's grasping her and moving her away from Sofia, because everybody knows Sophia's insane and not to be trusted. And the only person she seemed to have a bond with was her brother, Alberto Falcone, who was killed in the first episode. And for her, that was the most tragic catalyst for this entire story. It's the thing that's been retching at her. The one person that actually cared about her has
saw her humanity, her potential,
torn away, where everybody else in her family viewed her as an outcast. So it's a story of outcasts, and it's a story of people who are victims of circumstance, who are expected to evolve and develop into these sinister, sadistic supervillain archetypes that eventually the Batman will have to step in and confront.
Yeah,
very interesting dynamic.
I think with Sofia, if I had to prognosticate, it's that she's going to continually be reminded of the woman that her brother saw in her, reminded of that familial care that he had for her, and she's gonna progressively betray that despite herself, despite her every intention to live up to her brother's expectations of who she is. She's gonna start to lose touch with that, as the memory of her brother kind of is probably going to get clown mirrored a bit, and she's going to use it as a tool to actually become a worse person in a way. That would be my expectation, and we're going to see if that's going to be her tragedy. Is she's going to end up betraying that expectation that her that caring, generous expectation that her brother did have for her.
And
Yeah,
the sad irony is that it's inevitable because
Mhm.
ultimately she is actually insane. She dreams psychotic
yeah,
sleep, and she wakes up and there's scar marks all over her. There's self-harm. She's a genuinely disturbed woman, and every chance she has at human contact and human relationships are doomed to fail in
Mhm.
her case, unfortunately.
Mhm.
I know I complained, and I have this. This complaint is going to be, I think, my complaint through the whole thing, which is that this just doesn't feel like a piece of superhero media. But through that complaint, there is an interesting intellectual question that does arise that I do think is interesting to me personally, maybe to you as well, which is this kind of. I know deconstruction is such a overused term, but if you think about deconstruction as taking away structure, removing it, not just like, inverting things, but the idea of how many legs from a table can you remove and still have it stand, right? How many pieces, how many layers of the onion can you remove and still have it be an onion? And so what we have with Penguin is, I think, an interesting experiment that helps us get closer to that question, which is how many layers can you peel away from a piece of archetypal genre fiction and still have that piece? I personally think like we've gone too far, but it
Mm,
is a
good
fascinating
point.
question. But it is a fascinating question, which it is different for every different consumer and audience member. Which is, again, what is the bare minimum of pieces that you have to have in order for this to be a piece of superhero or supervillain fiction?
Mm.
And so what we have here, in little moments, I think, you can still see the little kernel, where it's like, hey, that's the piece where we're signaling this is still a supervillain piece. I think the opening musical bits, there's this little, I think, little musical stingers and little pieces that still kind of go beyond what a normal mob show would do.
Yeah.
The fact that Penguin he's not just Tony Soprano. He's a little more than that. He
Mhm.
still looks a little penguin-like, and they're calling him a supervillain name. So they're trying to, like I said, boil down and get to some maybe essence or something. There's something interesting, I think, to think about in terms of this from that point of view.
They are leaving the breadcrumbs for the journey back. So you could see the trail eventually form and then converge to a reappearance of the Batman. I do think it's interesting that they intentionally left the Matt Reeves Bat universe outside of the DCU that James Gunn is developing because, as you mentioned with deconstruction, James Gunn seems to be headed towards reconstruction and he wants to rebuild a bit of that superhero branding that has been lost in all of these real world takes of all of these properties. So we still get to enjoy the gritty, real aspects of these characters, the reimaginings that we've had with the Joker, for example. But there are superheroes to look forward to. They just will never, I think the two will, the twain never shall meet, I believe. And we will have a different version of the Batman and the Penguin, I believe, in the DCU.
What would Superman look like in this universe?
Oh,
He would just be like a carnival strongman. Like, that's like, yeah.
It would be some horrific alien, ghostly thing that is just like devouring everything. Like he wouldn't even be gray matter monster, right? Like he would just be.
Well, that's one angle. I think the other angle would be to make him a Charles Atlas figure, almost like a charlatan, where he's like pretending to like lift things that he can't actually. Like he's big, he's a big buff guy, but he's like a circus strongman or something.
I was thinking like a xenomorph with a cape.
That's too fantastical for this universe. It has to be just a regular guy who just happens to be stronger than normal.
Sure.
So
yeah,
I like to think. Maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I like to think that you can still do superhero stories in a genre that isn't superhero the genre. I think where it's just a mob boss crime story, and somehow inside of that you could do a superhero story. I feel like it's possible, and I feel like Batman has the most potential for that. For my limited perspective on what has been done with Batman in particular in cinema and in comics, they've kind of he's always been a bit of a hybrid genre hopping sort of character in a way, like coming out like it's superhero, but it's also like just gumshoe crime sort of noir sort of thing. It's already intensely interested in other genres. So I feel like there's some room for that to still happen and be successful with Batman, where probably it actually wouldn't it would be there's much less potential for Spider-Man, for instance, to genre hop. But you might still be able to pull it off. It remains to be seen if they'll do that with the TV show, to be fair. But
absolutely. Yep. Well, I'm a big fan of both, and I'm looking forward to seeing more. This was a particularly strong episode, I thought, of the Penguin, and very good writing, showing his ability to manipulate and maneuver all of these obstacles to still meet his ends. Long Halloween is a long-standing classic and was an original attempt to push those boundaries that you mentioned, Matt C., of crossing over into noir territory and how real world can you get within the superhero genre. Those boundaries continue to be pushed with Matt Reeves' Bat universe, and we'll see where it goes.
Obviously, Long Halloween, great story. Take a look at it, even if it's not the usual fare, and I am more of a usual fare guy. It's still a worthwhile read. And it doesn't, it's still something you can read is, if not 100% canonical, you can read as parallel to canon pretty easily. And Penguin, like I said, I'm trying to find some interesting angles for me to engage with it, at least intellectually. I'm not sure if I'm prepared for 8 episodes of Colin Farrell.
Not even intellectually. It's not even intellectually stimulating. It's just
I'm not sure yet. I'm trying. But it's that one's a lot harder for me because, like I said, I keep having these moments of why am I here? So I'm not a big fan of mob fiction, and I got the moment that broke me in this episode was where Oz has a little like party with his goons, and he introduces Vic to some. Basically a cam whore, a camera prostitute. She just talks about how she's into fetish stuff, and I'm just like, this is not. Why am I here? What am I doing? I'm here. I like Batman. Why am I listening to a girl talk about how she does fetish stuff on camera?
If we can get Batpeen in the Black Label DC universe, you can handle.
Remember that?
No.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
Remember
Black Label.
Remember
it is
Batpeen?
Please
HBO.
stop. Please stop.
I had a lot of fun with both. I mean, Long Halloween. It's so refreshing to read a different pace to comics than what we read today. It was really nice to read a long form kind of a story that wanted to go at a particular pace that we've kind of lost in a way. And I loved the art. The art is brilliant and strange and weird and confident. And in some ways, I feel like HBO is strange and weird and confident. And it's earned my trust on a character writing level that it's going to pay off, not just with more than just the veneer of it being a super villain story. I feel like it's not just writing that. It's probably going to take us in interesting places, and it's gonna satisfy someone like Twitless, and it's gonna feel like it's still part of the DCU in some respects. That's the impression I'm getting from the confidence and the weirdness of this particular show. I think it's gonna go in good directions.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.